stalking my boss to try and get him to pay you back because you think I'm good for it. You're pathetic. I'm not stalking your boss, I said, stepping into his space. I'm working. Working. He rolled his eyes, working on what ruining my night. Look, I did you a favor inviting you, but if you're going to loom around Sterling like a desperate stray, you can leave. Seriously, get out. You want me to leave? I want you gone, he spat. Go back to your little apartment and your little spreadsheets. Leave the business to the adults. Security. He actually raised his hand to signal a security guard. He was going to have his own sister escorted out of his engagement party because he was terrified I might dim his shine for even a second. The guard started to move toward us. My parents were watching from across the room. My mother's face tight with annoyance. My father shaking his head. They were letting him do it. They were going to watch me be humiliated, publicly shamed, just to keep Julian's ego intact. Something in my chest locked into place. It was the click of a safety coming off. No, I said. It wasn't a scream. It was a statement of fact. Julian blinked. Excuse me. I said no. I repeated, louder this time. The nearby chatter died down. I'm not leaving, and I'm not embarrassed. You are. You're making a scene, he hissed, glancing around nervously. Lower your voice. Why, I asked, stepping back so I wasn't whispering anymore. Are you afraid Sterling will hear you? Are you afraid he'll find out that the integrity you just bragged about includes taking $15,000 from your sister and then trying to kick her out when she stands up for herself? Elena, shut up, he warned, his face turning an ugly shade of red. You are drunk. You're jealous. I'm not jealous. Julian, I said, my voice clear as a bell in the sudden silence of the tent. I'm the only person in this room who knows exactly what you're worth. He stepped forward, his hand raising as if to grab me again, his face twisted in a snarl of entitlement. You are nothing, he spat. You are a failure. Get out of my face before you what? The voice didn't come from me. It came from behind Julian. Deep, authoritative, the kind of voice that stops a room cold. Julian froze. The color drained from his face instantly. He turned slowly. Elias Sterling was standing there, holding a glass of mineral water, his expression unreadable, but his eyes cold, sharp, and terrifyingly intelligent were locked on my brother. Mr. Sterling, Julian stammered. The transformation from bully to sycophant, instantaneous. I apologize. My sister was just leaving. She's a bit unstable. Family drama. I was handling it. Sterling didn't look at Julian. He looked at me. He looked at my slate gray suit. He looked at the defiance in my eyes. And then, for the first time all night, he smiled. Actually, Julian, Sterling said, his voice carrying effortlessly to the silent crowd, I don't think she's leaving. I believe she's the only reason I'm still here. Julian's laugh was nervous, a high-pitched jitter. I don't understand. You know Elena. Sterling took a sip of his water. I know EM Analytics, he said softly. I hired them 3 weeks ago to audit your division for the merger. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the wind rustling the tent flaps. You could hear the ice melting in the buckets. Julian's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Sterling, then he looked at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow slow. Then all at once, the confusion, the denial, and finally, the dawn of sheer, unadulterated panic. "You," Julian whispered, staring at me as if I were a ghost. "You're the auditor." I took a step forward, closing the distance between us. I wasn't the little sister anymore. I wasn't the failure. I was the one holding the pen. "I'm not just the auditor, Julian," I said, my voice steady, pitching it so my parents could hear every syllable. "I'm the one who found the fake contracts. If you've been waiting for a bully to get exactly what they deserve, comment karma below right now." Because the look on his face, it was worth every single penny. Julian laughed. It was a wet, breathless sound, like a drowning man trying to convince himself he could breathe water. "This is a joke," he stammered, looking wildly from Sterling to me. "She's my sister. She's a bookkeeper. She doesn't audit Apex deals. Mom, Dad, tell him. Tell him she's making this up to ruin the party." My mother stepped forward, clutching her pearls like they were oxygen tubing. "Mr. Sterling, please. Elena has always been imaginative. She's jealous of Julian's success. I'm sure whatever report you have is just a misunderstanding." Elias Sterling didn't even blink. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a folded document. It wasn't thick, just 3 pages. The summary. He handed it to Julian. "Page 1, paragraph 3. Sterling said, his voice dropping to a register that made the hair on my arm stand up. "Vendor code 774, North Star Logistics. You booked $4 million in shipping revenue from them last quarter." Julian snatched the paper, his eyes darting across the lines. Sweat began to bead on his forehead, rolling down into his eyes. He didn't wipe it away. So Julian challenged, though his voice was an octave too high. "They're a key client. We have contracts." "We checked the address for North Star," I said, stepping closer. I didn't shout. I spoke with the calm detachment of a coroner reading a time of death. "It's a P.O. box in a strip mall in Nevada, a strip mall that houses a dry cleaner and a vape shop, and the IP address used to sign those digital contracts, it matches the laptop you're using to run that slideshow right now." The silence in the tent shifted. It went from confused to heavy, suffocating under the weight of the truth. Savannah, standing a few feet away, took a half step back from her fiancé. "Elena," my father barked, finding his voice. "Stop this. You are destroying your brother's reputation." He destroyed it himself. "Dad," I replied without looking at him. I just turned on the lights. "It's not just the revenue." Sterling cut in, taking the paper back from Julian's trembling hands. "It's the expenses. Tell me, Julian, does Vanguard Logistics typically hold strategy meetings at the Sapphire Gentlemen's Club in Las Vegas?" A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone near the buffet dropped a fork. It clattered against the china, loud as a gunshot. "That was client acquisition," Julian yelled, the veins in his neck bulging. "We closed the deal there. You categorized it as software licensing fees." I corrected, $12,000, and another $8,000 for consulting that went directly to a personal PayPal account linked to your college roommate. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, projecting a screenshot onto the large monitor behind the stage, the same monitor Julian had been using to display photos of his perfect life. The image changed from a photo of Julian and Savannah on a yacht to a spreadsheet row. Highlighted in red funds, diverted to personal debt consolidation. "You stole from the company to pay off your gambling debts, Julian," I said. "And when that wasn't enough, You started inventing sales to trigger your performance bonuses. You didn't build a legacy. You built a Ponzi scheme. Julian lunged. It was a desperate, clumsy move. He reached for me, his hand clawing at the air, maybe trying to grab the phone, maybe trying to strangle the truth out of my throat. "You witch," he screamed. "You ruined everything." Two of Sterling's security team moved faster than I thought possible. Before Julian could touch me, a heavy hand clamped onto his shoulder and spun him around. He stumbled, crashing into a table of champagne flutes. Glass shattered. Gold liquid pooled on the white floorboards. Savannah let out a sob and covered her mouth. Her mother, the political matriarch, grabbed her arm and began pulling her toward the exit. "We are leaving," she announced, her voice icy. "Now." "Savannah, wait," Julian pleaded, struggling against the guard's grip. "It's a lie, she's lying." She didn't look back. My mother was trembling now, her face pale. She looked at Sterling, then at me, her eyes pleading. "Elena, fix this. Tell Mr. Sterling you made a mistake. Please. For the family." I looked at the woman who had called me just hours ago to demand I smile. I looked at the father who had watched me pay for this party and then laughed when his son tried to kick me out of it. "I can't fix math, Mom," I said softly, "and I can't fix fraud." Sterling straightened his cuffs. "The merger is dead," he announced to the room. "And Julian, don't bother coming in on Monday, or ever. Our legal team has already forwarded the audit to the SEC and the district attorney. I imagine they'll have questions about the wire fraud." Wire fraud. The words hung in the air like smoke. Julian slumped. The fight went out of him. He looked small. Suddenly, the golden boy had melted down to cheap tin. "But," Julian whispered, looking at me with wet, red eyes, "but I paid for the deposit. I paid for all of this." "Actually," I said, delivering the final cut, "you didn't." I pulled up one last notification on my banking app. "You never paid me back the $15,000, Julian, and the jeweler. That was my card, too. But since you're no longer employed, and I imagine your assets are about to be frozen by the feds." I tapped my phone screen. Transaction canceled. "I just reported the charges as fraudulent, since, technically, you solicited the funds under false pretenses." "You can't," he choked out. "The venue, they'll kick us out." "They already are," I said, gesturing to the venue manager who was briskly walking toward us with two police officers trailing behind him. I turned to my parents. They looked like statues, crumbling in real time. The illusion they had sacrificed their daughter to protect was gone. All that was left was the bill. "I'm going home," I said, adjusting my blazer. "I have a real job to get to in the morning." I walked past my brother, who was now weeping into his hands. I walked past Sterling, who gave me a single, respectful nod. I walked out of the tent and into the cool night air. Behind me, I heard my mother start to scream my name. Not in anger this time, but in panic. She was realizing that the ATM was closed. The golden child was a criminal, and the daughter she had thrown away was the only one left standing. I didn't turn around. I kept walking toward my Honda. For the first time in my life, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. The morning after the party, I didn't wake up to the sound of birds chirping or a sudden sense of euphoria. I woke up to the relentless, angry buzzing of my phone on the nightstand. It was vibrating so hard, it was actually moving across the wood, inching closer to the edge like a frantic animal trying to escape. I stared at the screen. 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, a string of texts that started with, "How could you?" and devolved into, "Pick up. We need money for a lawyer." I sat up, the silence of my loft wrapping around me like a protective blanket. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix a crisis I hadn't created. I walked to the kitchen, ground fresh beans, and made a cup of coffee. I drank it while it was still hot. It seems like a small thing, but when you spend your life putting out other people's fires, you get used to drinking your coffee cold. I turned on the local news. It was a slow Sunday, so the scandal at the vineyard had made the mid-morning segment. There was no footage of me, thankfully, but there was a clip of a very pale Julian being escorted out of the venue by police, his tuxedo jacket thrown over his handcuffed wrists to hide them. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Vanguard executive detained in multi-million-dollar fraud investigation." Savannah's family had moved even faster than Sterling's legal team. A statement had been released by her father's press secretary before sunrise. The engagement is terminated immediately. We are cooperating fully with authorities, and we're unaware of Mr. Vance's financial activities. They had scrubbed him from their social media before he was even processed at the station. My phone buzzed again. This time, I picked it up. It was a voicemail from my father. I pressed play, putting it on speaker while I buttered a piece of toast. "Elena." His voice cracked, stripped of all its usual bluster. "They're setting bail at $50,000. We don't have the liquidity. The bank froze the joint accounts because his name is on them. You need to come down here. You need to talk to Sterling. Tell him to drop the charges. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. We can't lose him. Elena, he's your brother." Not a word about the money he stole from me. Not a word about the fact that he had tried to humiliate me 12 hours ago. Just a demand to fix it. I didn't feel anger. I felt exhaustion. It was a heavy, gray weight in my chest. For a moment, the old conditioning kicked in that knee-jerk instinct to save them, to be the good daughter, to light myself on fire so they could stay warm. I looked at my bank account balance on my laptop. The money I had clawed back by canceling those transactions was sitting there, safe. I could wire it. I could bail him out. I could go back to being the doormat, and they would love me again for exactly as long as the check cleared. Then I looked at the empty chair across the room where I used to sit and cry after family dinners. Nota whispered to the empty room. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my phone settings. I scrolled down to the contact labeled Mom and hit block caller, then Dad, block caller, then Julian, block caller. One by one, I severed the digital arteries that kept the toxicity flowing into my life. When I set the phone down, the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. This is the part of revenge stories. People don't talk about the aftershock. It's not a victory lap. It feels like an amputation. I sat on my kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, and felt a wave of crushing guilt. Was I too harsh? Did I destroy my parents' lives? They were old. They were scared. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. I ordered takeout, ignored the door when my aunt came knocking, and stared at the wall. The doubt is a parasite. It feeds on the years of manipulation you haven't processed yet. I kept hearing my mother's voice. Family is everything. But then, on Tuesday evening, a courier arrived with a box from the company. Inside was my final check from Apex for the audit, along with a handwritten note from Elias Sterling. Integrity is expensive. Most people can't afford it. You just bought your freedom. Don't refund it. I held that note for a long time. The guilt began to recede, replaced by clarity. I hadn't ruined my family. I had simply stopped enabling their ruin. I hadn't caused Julian's downfall. I had just refused to cushion the landing. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights of Denver. My phone was quiet. My bank account was secure. My conscience was clean. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, the air didn't taste like anxiety. It tasted like my own life, and I was finally the one living it. They say living well is the best revenge. I used to think that was just a cliche. People put on coffee mugs or Instagram captions to make themselves feel better about being lonely. I thought it meant buying a flashy car, posting photos from a yacht, or rubbing your success in the faces of the people who doubted you. But I was wrong. Real revenge isn't about proving anything to them. It's about proving something to yourself. It's the quiet peace of waking up on a Saturday morning without a knot of dread in your stomach, knowing that no one is going to call you with an emergency that only your wallet can fix. It has been 6 months since I walked out of that vineyard. 6 months since I blocked the numbers that used to govern my emotional state. And in that silence, I found something I didn't know I was missing. Freedom. My business, EM Analytics, isn't a little bookkeeping hobby anymore. After the Apex audit, word got around integrity, it turns out, is a rare commodity in the corporate world, and people are willing to pay a premium for it. I hired 2 junior associates last month, kids fresh out of college who remind me of myself. Eager and sharp, I pay them well. I give them credit for their work. I treat them with the respect I starved for in my own home. And when I look around my loft, the space doesn't feel empty. It feels full of possibility. I heard through the grapevine, because Denver is a small town when you run in certain circles, that Julian's legal battles are dragging on. The plea deal on the table involves restitution that will take him a decade to pay off. My parents had to downsize, selling the house they were so proud of to cover his legal fees. They chose their investment, and now they are living with the returns. I don't smile when I hear this. I don't celebrate it. I just acknowledge it as the natural law of cause and effect. They spent years planting seeds of entitlement, and now they are harvesting the weeds. But the most important thing I've learned isn't about them. It's about the lie I told myself for 30 years. The lie that said family is an obligation you can never quit. No matter how toxic the water gets, we are taught that blood is thicker than water, but we forget that blood can also carry poison. You are allowed to apply a tourniquet. You are allowed to cut off the limb to save the body. If you are listening to this and you feel like the family failure, I want you to hear me clearly. That label is not a fact. It is a projection. They call you difficult because you have boundaries. They call you selfish because you have self-worth. They call you a failure because your success doesn't serve their ego. Don't let them write your story. You are the only one holding the pen. There are days when I miss the idea of them. I miss the family I wanted them to be, but I do not miss the family they were. I have replaced the chaos with calm. I have replaced the criticism with confidence. And I have replaced the transactional relationships with people who like me for who I am, not for what I can wire to their bank account by 5 o'clock. This is what freedom looks like. It's not a finish line you cross with a cheer. It's a garden you water every day. It's the decision to value your own peace over someone else's drama. It's the realization that you don't owe anyone your destruction. I want to know about your journey. Have you ever had to fire a family member to save your own sanity? Have you ever been the one they underestimated, only to come back and own the room? Tell me your story in the comments below. If this video reminded you of a boundary you need to set, or a conversation you need to have, write freedom in the comments so I know you're standing with me. We read every single story, and trust me, you are not alone in this. There is a whole community of us who have decided that we are done being the doormats. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to the truth. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We're building something real here, and I want you to be a part of it. Remember, don't let anyone dim your light, even if they share your last name. Sometimes, you have to burn the bridge to keep the fire from reaching your house.